The topics and opinions expressed on the following show are solely those of the hosts and their guests and not those of W4WN Radio, its employees, or affiliates. We make no recommendations or endorsements for radio show programs, services, or products mentioned on air or on our web. No liability, explicit or implied, shall be extended to W4WN Radio, its employees, or affiliates. Any questions or comments should be directed to those show hosts. Thank you for choosing W4WN Radio.
Let's listen as Lorraine Lapointe, coach, therapist, educator, speaker, and founder of Head Heart Synergy, brings together another enlightened guest to inspire and motivate us to move forward, achieve our dreams and desires, so that we experience midlife awakening.
And I'm your host, Lorraine Lapointe. Today we'll enjoy another candid conversation that reveals how to bring back a sense of balance and how to find forward focus. Today, take just a few moments to join us as we explore the possibilities and the perspectives that provide us with greater inner peace, power, passion, and purpose. Because that's what I call living at the edge of fulfillment in a midlife awakening. Well, hello and welcome to our friends around the world. Today's show is a little bit different, I think, because, let me ask you the question. Have you ever had the privilege to notice that sometimes the worst of times, when your heart feels like it's breaking, that it can be the gateway to leading to actually a better future? And I say the word privilege because in hindsight, heartbreaking experiences often are necessary to bring forward the next beautiful thing in life. Nature has shown us this in the story of the caterpillar. That poor little thing has to first fully dissolve into a pile of goo. And that's heartbreaking, I'm sure, from its perspective. But it's necessary so it can be reformed into a magnificent butterfly and go on to enjoy the new skills and abilities in its life, including how to fly. So it seems to me that many of my greatest blessings have come from being wrapped in heartache. And of course, when we're in it, it feels like we're falling down a rabbit hole. It feels full of sorrow and despair, and the journey is tumultuous and painful, confusing. And I remember feeling that way actually as I sat in my car in the parking lot of a hospital, knowing that inside the building, my mother's body was being ravaged by a battle between cancer and radiation. Sitting in that car in that moment, I felt helpless and desperately needed the silence of that small, safe inner space. And although there were people walking by, I felt like I was untouchable. No one knew in that moment that my heart was breaking. And often when experiencing heartbreak, it can be difficult to perceive anything getting better in our lives. But it is a time for healing to begin, and the best time to reach out and find comfort, and often we can be empowered and get that comfort by sharing stories, whether it's about the caterpillar or any other story that is like tragedy to triumph. And stories help us regain our perspective and give us hope for happy endings. Like the fact that my mom survived that treatment and she lived for 3 more years. And that was a blessed time together, Some of the greatest empowerment and comfort comes from sharing our stories with others. And this week, our guest will candidly share her story about how she moved from heartbreak to real love. Oh, and by the way, for those I haven't met, I'm Lorraine Lapointe. You can think of me as a guide for people who are standing somewhere between something they've survived and who they are becoming, because right here is where you're meant to be. I help you gain perspective and healing on the journey that you're on. Because research shows that our perspective changes, and as it changes, we get stronger. And this is why I reach out through this radio and talk for TV program each week, so that we can create this inspiring, safe, sacred space to explore different ways to live with that peace, power, passion, and purpose. And today, whether you're here live or you've come across us later on, we invite you to engage and connect with us. Each week, we broadcast in all kinds of different places through different social media platforms. So I invite you to notice when there's something in the conversation that is interesting and be sure to let us know, because we want to connect with you. And we want to dig into interesting topics on our way to finding the fulfillment that we crave. And you can simply add comments or questions, or even send an invitation encouraging friends or family to enjoy this episode as we explore the movement from heartbreak to real love. And we are here on the edge of fulfillment on W4WN.com and Talk 4 TV. And I want to acknowledge our producer and thank her for all the work that we don't know that she does behind the scenes. She'll pull up comments on screen and she queues up questions. And we do love to answer your questions because they shape the program into something most interesting for you. And for each comment, like, or share, many of you know I provide a day of fresh water wherever it's needed most in the world through B1G1.com. And often on the show, we run a contest with different prizes as gifts. And to be entered into this contest, all you do is listen throughout the show for 5 inspirational words. And then we'll ask you to put those 5 words in the chat or send an email with them at the end of the show. And then this week, you can win an Amazon gift card sponsored by our guest. So remember to put the words in the chat when asked at the end of the show. And you've already heard the first word. So the first word is heart. And it's so good to have you here exploring your heart here on the Edge of Fulfillment today and every Friday at 10 a.m. Eastern. And after this short break, we'll meet today's guest and we'll be right back.
Mental fitness, the missing X factor for enhancing performance, achievement, and success. Mental fitness empowers you with the magic of 3: stabilized mood, peace of mind, deeper relationships. Time to make it happen? Grow the self-command muscle. Intercept your self-defenses. Build your inner wisdom. In less than 15 minutes a day, gain the missing X factor. Let me show you how.
There comes a time we wonder, what's next? For women like us, as we stand at the edge of fulfillment, are you feeling unsettled, restless, not quite right? That's midlife awakening. Are you looking for fulfillment? Or to squeeze more juice out of life? Midlife awakening at the edge of fulfillment, don't miss it. We understand. By phone or laptop, wherever you are, come join us. Friday 10 a.m. Eastern Time, on Head Heart Synergy Facebook business page, or here, on the Women4 Women Network Radio and Talk 4 TV.
Hey, welcome back. So a little reminder, we're running a contest this week to win an Amazon gift card provided by our guest. And we've already heard the first of the 5 words that you'll need to put in the comments at the end of the show. So don't add them yet. As a reminder, we heard the first word, and that was heart. So now you just need to listen for the other words as we continue on the Edge of Fulfillment here on W4WN, the Women4 Women Network Radio, and Talk for TV. And I'm going to welcome today's guest, but let me tell you a little bit about her first. Dana Dean is a passionate advocate for change. As an inspirational speaker, she's dedicated to help others heal their hearts. She's the mother of 2 adult children and currently lives in Hawaii. Oh, that's makes my heart sing. Dana is an intuitive coach, a mentor, a spiritual teacher, and she's writing a book, Straight to the Heart, a new pathway through spiritual awakening and ascension. So let me not talk about her. Let's bring her on. Let's welcome her to the Edge of Fulfillment. Welcome, Dana Dean.
Good morning.
Good morning. So good to have you here, Dana. Thanks for being with us today.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, and it's early in Hawaii.
It is. It's
So
5 o'clock.
yeah, so I especially want to thank you for making such an effort to be with us today. And I understand you've had a really interesting life so far. Good morning, Christine. How are you? I understand you've had a really interesting life so far. And where would you like to start your story?
Well, I think I'll start with just a little bit of my background. I was a professional social worker for 23 years, and I've spent my entire life caring for other people due to having a genuine concern for other people. And I'm empathic, and I've always desired to end the suffering for other people and for all people on this planet. I have spent most of my career, those 23 years, working in addictions and substance abuse. And I was also a caregiver for my oldest son, Brendan, for 25 years. So I've had quite a varied background.
Did I detect a little hesitation in your voice there when you talked about Brendan?
Yeah, just a little.
Do you want to
Yeah.
talk about that, or is that something?
Yeah, I'm going to come up to that relatively quickly.
Okay.
I wanted to talk just a sec about my early family life because it set me on a trajectory for patterns, established patterns that were not necessarily healthy. I'd spent a lot of time traveling down some very difficult paths. I've struggled with addictions myself and mental health issues and a pattern of abusive relationships that has been the result of me feeling silenced and insignificant and really unworthy of love. And I had really a little amount of self-love or acceptance. And I traveled that path alone for a really long time. And I had a series of significant losses in my life. I lost my husband many years ago, and then my father, and also two younger brothers that I raised who were both in their early 40s, and it was related to drug and alcohol abuse. And so they were sudden deaths and they were quite unexpected. And then I also lost my son, Brendan. And what happened for me was I started to descend down a pathway that I didn't necessarily want to be on. But it was the pathway of spiritual ascension and a spiritual awakening, and it lasted for 3 years, quite some time. And during that 3 years,
The heartbreak. Sorry, the heartbreak lasted 3 years, or the
well, the heartbreak lasted a lot longer, but this path of spiritual ascension lasted for a little over 3 years. And during that 3 years, it was just a living hell for me. I felt defeated and desperate and depressed beyond anything I'd ever known before. And I'd spent a lot of time in depression previous to that. But really, I think what was happening is after the loss of all those significant people in my life, I had given up hope that my life would ever get good again or that I would ever experience true love again. And a kind of quiet desperation sunk in. And so instead of living life full out and to my best ability, I was attracting those really unhealthy patterns again. So I felt completely lost. And in 2019, I had a series of really bad relationships, just one after the next. And I ended up dating a couple of narcissistic personality types who had many narcissistic traits. And that was kind of one of them in particular was very, very abusive. And that led me to a really extreme breakup that was extremely painful. We had only dated for about 6 months, but the abuse was profound. And what I realized later was that I had trauma bonded with this individual, and meaning that, the thing that had brought us together and kept us together was we had both had similar childhood wounding. And being the empath that I am, I could really feel his pain and really wanted to do nothing but bring more love to his world. And so I effectively gave up on myself and sacrificed myself for the relationship. And it affected me in every area, emotionally, mentally, physically, spiritually. I was really kind of bankrupt at that time. But I remember driving home from the breakup, and it was a really dark and bleak day. And I remember walking up the steps to my condo really wearily. I was so tired. And when I walked into my condo in the middle of the room, I first sank to my knees, and then I sank to my hands and knees. And then I was in a ball, just in a ball in the middle of my living room in such excruciating pain. I was sobbing and crying, and I began to scream out to the God of my understanding to please remove some of the pain and help me. And of course, I just wanted it to stop, the pain. I didn't understand what was happening to me at that point. But all I could feel was agony. I felt as if I was being torn to pieces, and I didn't think I'd make it through the rest of that day. I really did not. And I even prayed to God to die that day. I just felt like I couldn't take anymore. And I had no hope. I had no hope for any kind of relief.
That sounds like the bottom of the pit of despair.
It was.
That's what really I call the rabbit hole. You go down the rabbit hole, and it's just one thing after another, after another, after another, until
our breaking point. Yeah. So I stayed in that really awful position for almost 2 weeks. I couldn't move. I was paralyzed and unable to function. I could not stop sobbing. I couldn't stop praying. All I could do was pray and scream and cry. And I could crawl to the bathroom, and I could crawl to the kitchen to get a little bit of water. But what it really felt like, Lorraine, was that every heartache and every loss that I had in my life all came back at the same time, and they were being magnified and intensified. I was feeling everything, and I was feeling all of the loss all at once. And during that, there was one particular thought that was resonating in my head, and it was, I cannot withstand not one more heartbreak. I can't. And I knew that I could no longer travel down that same road. And I was envisioning during that time my heart actually being on the outside of my body. And what I saw was so frightening, because it was a jungle full of scars, full of the rips, the tears, the cuts and the wounds, and just this mangled muscle that was bleeding and leaking profusely. It was so profound, and it was so clear how wounded I was, and I could barely feel the heartbeat. I could barely hear my heartbeat, and yet I needed to have that. I needed to hear it and to hang on to it for hope. And I was terrified that both my heart and I would not survive. So I had the picture of it eventually going all the way to my heart shredding into a million pieces and just stopping, just done. And that was my truth in that moment. So I had COVID twice right after that, 2020. And as well, my legs completely stopped working. Both my hips and my knees went out completely. And so that left me bedridden. I was in bed for months and months, probably close to 6 months. And some really interesting things started to happen to me at that point. I began to have hallucinations, both visual and auditory. I was hearing voices. My mental health was barely, I'm sorry, I don't know what the right word is, but tenuous at best. And I was also completely isolated and alone. I had no friends or family, except for one. I have one beautiful neighbor that I love like a sister who stood by my side through this entire journey. And even when it was impossible to believe the things that I was saying and the things that were happening to me, she was there for me. And that was a godsend for sure.
Isn't it amazing how it only takes one person?
Yeah.
They don't have to be related. They don't have to be connected to us in any way. And sometimes it's someone who stands beside us for a long period of time. And sometimes it's a look, a smile, a sentence, a word, a phrase, but it just takes one.
Yeah, and that's exactly how it was, because I was insane and I was throwing out some really crazy scenarios that were happening to me in my head anyway. And she never once looked at me with disbelief like the doctors would, or other professionals, that I had told my story to. And it was so meaningful for me. It was my lifeline. It really kept me going. So thank you. You know who you are. I love you very much. But I was so impaired. Every area of my life was unmanageable. It was just out of control. And everyone in my life had seemingly vanished into thin air. And I said my mental health was shaky. I was really out of touch with reality. And I was experiencing God speaking to me and having these really huge energetic shifts in my body. So I would get messages from spirit, and basically what the bottom line of what was going on was spiritual warfare and spiritual ascension, and learning about who I truly am and uncovering the truth about myself that I had hidden up for so long. I had hid behind, I had denied, I had lied, I had all of these illusions in my mind that had come from early childhood, where I had subconscious beliefs that I wasn't worthy and I wasn't lovable and I was not acceptable. And I had always looked outside myself externally for validation and for acceptance and for all of those things that I thought that came from with outside, outside myself. So a relationship to make me feel better, or a job to make me feel better, or, anything but taking a look at what was really going on inside of me. And what happened during those conversations I had with God was I got to meet myself, and the light side and the dark side, both sides. And during that spiritual warfare, that period, I had to fight demons and dragons and entities. And I actually fought Satan himself multiple times. And what I realized through the process was I was fighting my own demons. Those were my inner demons. And again, I was projecting it onto other people outside of myself to be Satan or to be devil. For example, the narcissistic person I was in a relationship with, I perceived him to be Satan. And so my mind continuously played tricks on me and wreaked havoc with my body, wreaked havoc with my emotional body, but it also commanded my attention and my dedication. I was tested during that period over and over and over. And what became really clear was I was losing my mind. I had to do something differently. I had to begin to live my life completely differently than I had up until, those 53 years. And the storms just raged within. It wasn't something that I could put out.
Yeah, I actually term that the awakening. That's the point of awakening, where you suddenly realize
Absolutely.
things can't go on this way.
No.
There must be something else.
Yeah. And like I had said in my, when I visualized my heart, I knew the end was near. I would literally die if I did not do it differently and be willing to look at those things I had hidden for so long. So change for me came slowly over time.
Mm-hmm.
And as I gathered my strength, I started doing my inner work to heal those wounds in my heart. I started to recognize that I had serious trauma to heal from my childhood. I also had PTSD, depression, anxiety, and I was addicted to that negative energy and toxicity that felt like a comfort zone for me.
That's like being addicted to your story. Some people are addicted to their story. They just need to tell it and tell it and tell it and wallow in it and share it and they are not their story.
Right. We are so much more than what has happened to us or our behaviors or our experiences. And I learned that no matter what has happened to any of us, we have intrinsic worth and value at our core that we don't have to earn. We don't have to perform. We don't have to do something to have that value.
Well, and that's compassion, right? That's that self-compassion.
And self-love, yeah.
Yeah. I want to let our listeners know that compassion is our second inspirational word today. So we've had heart and we've had compassion. So that's our second word. It sounds like, was that the beginning of recovery?
Yeah, well, that was the decision, where I made the decision to, okay, I have to do it differently. What am I going to do? And I began working on myself and doing my shadow work, which shadow work is all of the darkness of our personality or ourselves that we don't like to look at. So those things like people pleasing or being controlled.
Avoidance.
Yes. And nobody likes to look at them, but we have to if we want to know ourselves and begin to love ourselves and to continue on that sacred journey. I had to get really real.
And sacred is our third word. And thank you for using that, because it is a sacred journey. Even the heartbreak is sacred part of the journey.
It was so sacred. And each loss and each heartbreak taught me new things and taught me more and more about myself. That I had strength in reserves I didn't understand. I had tenacity. I had willpower. I had all the things that I had just taken for granted. I'd never really acknowledged in myself or given myself any kudos for,
Yeah, I said at the top of the show, it's like the caterpillar. Like your story so much reminds me of the caterpillar that needed to be taken apart completely, turned inside out and made this pile of goo. With what was happening before it can be reformed and gain the benefit of all those skills and abilities
and experiences. Because, I would have these profound conversations with God that would go on for hours, and I would be so angry and indignant almost because of all the losses in my life. And I didn't understand it. I couldn't comprehend why. I was a loving person. I was a giving person. I was always giving to others and had only the best intentions in my heart. And yet I lost. I continued to lose, and I just couldn't process it.
Did you, in your conversations, come to an understanding of rebalancing?
Yeah, there was a metamorphosis that occurred because my God of my understanding is so loving and so forgiving and so embracing. And they wanted me, God and the angels and my guides wanted me to get two messages. And the first one is really profound. You are never alone.
Mm.
And I began to believe that and really understand that and know that I was never alone. There is a spirit world that, although we cannot see it, we are of it, you know. And
yeah, and can I interrupt for just a second, because you've just triggered in my mind something that I think is a message for someone out there. I don't know who, but
okay.
And that is when you said God is a God of love, who God, whatever you believe your God to be, and goodness knows, slap a label on that makes you happy. I always say, but it was even in love that it allowed you to feel the depth of the emotion. Because
Yeah.
as much as we hate heartbreak and as much as it's painful, it's a gift
Mm-hmm.
to feel that.
It really is. And it's very rich and it's very profound. And I was so grateful, even through the adventure of it all. I was so grateful that I have such an amazing and vivid imagination and could create whatever I needed to project in order to get well, in order to process those emotions that had been repressed and stuck. You know, I couldn't begin to explain to anyone how profound the loss of a son is and what those feelings felt like. I couldn't explain what it felt like to lose the love of my life, my best friend, my partner, and have to carry on, you know. And that's the legacy, is that those left behind, we have to carry on, and we have to find a way to carry on with that loss. So a lot of it was about internalizing in my heart, finding a place for those experiences, and yet not have them dictate my entire being and my entire life. And a lot of people get in that, you know, so they don't.
When I met you, you were glowing. You like, no one who meets you today and sees that beautiful, serene glow about you would even suspect, I would think, the underlying story that exists there, because I certainly didn't when I met you. And so the two, the before and the after, are remarkable.
Yeah, let's talk about that for a sec. The after. Once I made that decision, I started to get out of bed, you know, and I started to stand on my own 2 feet again. And that was difficult because my legs were not working and I had no stamina. And every step I took, literally, I had to work at it. And then I had to be really, really grateful for it, you know, that everything that happened, I was so grateful for. My breath, my life, my legs, my body, just the things we take for granted every day. Those were gifts to me. I was being given them back. And day by day, I learned how to rebuild my life with a newly found sense of self-love, a gentleness. I had to be very gentle and patient with myself. And then a commitment to caring for me, because I had been the caregiver for everyone else for so long. I literally did not know how to care for myself and put myself first. But I improved, you know, little by little. And rather than focusing on all that stuff outside me, I started to focus on prayer and meditation and really connecting with my God. And besides convincing me that I wasn't alone, God also told me that I had a divine purpose and I was valuable just because I was me, all of me. And so I received 2 direct messages during that time from God. And one was, tell your story. You have to tell your story, so write your book. And lots of people will benefit. Many, many people will benefit from hearing your stories. So that gave me some self-confidence and some passion. And I wanted to live my authentic life and really tell that story, because really, if that's the only reason I had those experiences and such profound loss was to be able to help other people through that process, I'm happy to do it. I'm really happy to do it. And therefore I found some meaning in those losses. It wasn't meaningless anymore. So I live on purpose today. I live in my purpose. And the second message was I needed to get my business up and running. And in that business, I needed to help other people heal from their heartbreak. And, I live my authentic life now. I've had to find the courage and the strength to carry on. And I've received so many blessings, so many gifts, so many miracles, really. That I have this inner revolution, if you will, inside of me that wants to help heal others, continue healing myself, because we're never done. It's a lifelong process. And to work passionately to heal the planet, raise the collective consciousness. The more we heal for ourselves, the more we're healing for the planet. And I'm so grateful to know what my purpose is today. And I really believe that we all come here to learn how to give and receive unconditional love. And then we learn to express it fully, without any conditions, without any performing, without any expectations of how a person has to behave or what we have to do, all those things we've been conditioned to believe. So everything has been restored. Everything I lost has been restored, and then some. So my confidence is greater, my happiness and joy is greater, my freedom, my sense of personal freedom is so remarkable. I wish that for everyone, a sense of freedom. And I'd like to invite the audience, to do that as well, to experience that sense of freedom. So, there are several ways to get involved with me or work with me if you'd like. And I think we're going to talk about those, Lorraine. But
I think so too. You mentioned 2 words that I'd like to highlight for our listeners, and that is the word authentic. So from this, you've discovered who you were truly, and you are the pain, and you are the pleasure.
Yes, both
So
sides.
you're truly authentic. So that's one of our words. And you recovered. You mentioned that you recovered that authenticity. And that's our 5th word. So we've had all of our special words, but the recovery process is often the journey of that heartache. So I'm just going to, for our listeners, I'm just going to go over the 5 words, and I'll do it again at the end of the show. But we've had heart, compassion, self-compassion, right? We've had sacred, authentic, and recovery. And this is such an empowering story of someone who was taken to the depths. And then I want to use the word reborn.
Yes, please.
A rebirth. Like that's what's coming to me now.
Yeah, it was a rebirthing. Oh, absolutely. And without the masks that we've all learned how to develop, we all have a mask or a face that we show the public, or our friends or our family, or, and we fall into roles that really do not reflect our authentic self because we are concerned with pleasing others and meeting expectations, and we lose that authenticity of what we really want and what we really need to be doing for ourselves. That's what happened to me. And through the rebirthing process, I was able to understand that it's more beneficial for other people if I'm not wearing the mask. It's more beneficial for all of us, for me to stand in that authentic truth and just be who I am. And you know what? It's a lot easier than wearing the masks and trying to please everyone all of the time. It's
our fear that stops us, right?
Yeah.
It's our fear and our beliefs. We all are a collection of beliefs. And if we believe we're separate, and if we believe we're here to suffer, and if we believe we can't take anymore, and we believe, all of these things, the beliefs can work against us. Or if we believe that we are here for purpose, we believe there's a gift in everything we experience. We believe we're capable of manifesting. I mean, you manifested a wonderful neighbor to stand by your side. I mean, amazing.
So special.
This is so inspirational. One of the things that we do on the show, because we are getting towards that time, unfortunately, but one of the things we often do is we pull an oracle card to see what's what. Would you like to do that today?
I would love to. Sure.
I have my cards, so I'm just going to shuffle them, and you say when, and I will take whatever card comes out.
Okay, when?
Healing the heart is the card.
Wow.
Healing the heart. I don't know why I should be shocked and awed. I say that a lot on this show, but let me read what the card is, because the message is there for someone.
Sure.
So, when we are wounded emotionally, you need time to regroup. You need to find your center. You may have recently endured a breakup, a betrayal, lost someone, lost a connection or tried to make a connection that you gave too much power to, which reminded me of what you said about that person with a lot of narcissism.
Yeah.
No matter the cause of this heartache, deep healing is what's called for. The path to healing the heart centers on a flow of giving and receiving. It begins within, not from without, just as you said, Dana.
Yes.
It is the condition of our life. Being willing to release pain, take responsibility for your part of it, and look for ways that you can then help yourself and others, which is exactly what you just said you're doing. Healing the heart will come in all aspects and is the priority of life right now.
That is so beautiful. Thank you.
Healing the heart. And this episode was called From Heartbreak to Real Love. Yeah. So we are getting towards our time together. Is there any message, any part of your story, anything that you'd like to share with our audience about where they may be at the moment in heartbreak and how they can help themselves to move towards real love?
Sure. I really want to speak to anyone that is in that place of having no hope, or in that place of complete isolation that is given up. Please don't give up. Please do not give up. You are not alone. And I would encourage you to reach out of that isolation, reach out to someone, that neighbor, that person at church, that person in your community, whoever it is, and start to find your voice. Because that was the difficult part of the journey for me, is finding my voice and beginning to speak again. And I also have a really fabulous group coming up that starts on March 16th that is called Unbreak My Heart. And if you're interested in that, you can get more information on that. But
and how do people connect with that? Is that the Facebook address that our producers, oh, there it is. Thanks, Roxy. Is that the way to connect with you, through that Facebook group?
that's the way to do it. And the group will actually be held inside the Facebook group. So yeah.
It's like a private space inside that Facebook group. That is awesome. Thank you so much for that invitation, Dana.
Oh, you're welcome.
And they can reach you through this email, heartstogether111@gmail.com.
That's correct.
Awesome. Yeah. Fabulous. That is great. Well, I want to thank you for your courage and your willingness to come and share your story. And
thank you.
It's so inspirational to those, like your losses. When people say they have heartbreaks, I mean, sometimes it's a broken nail, right? I always say, if you have no problems and you break a nail, it's a catastrophe. But compared to the losses that you have suffered, you know, our hearts go out to you. And at the same time, I want to acknowledge that having pity for someone who is in heartbreak is not helpful.
Not at all.
Standing beside them and saying, you got this.
Yes.
You got this.
Being that support, that's right. And that's what I hope to do, is end isolation for people and help them with that backbone when sometimes we don't feel like we have a backbone.
Yeah, I always say to someone, if you have no courage, borrow some of mine, because I've got some that I'll lend you, you know? My own belief is that we are here to connect and to help each other on our journey, that we are not actually separate, but there are parts of us all around us that want to help. And all we need to do is accept it and receive it.
Most definitely. And you know, one of the greatest challenges for me is to learn how to be willing to receive. And that's being in your feminine energy. And I spent a lifetime operating in my masculine energy, kind of making things happen and taking care of things and, you know, having this career and working. And I did not know how to be in that softer receiving mode.
Yeah. Yeah, it's hard to receive sometimes because, well, for me anyway, I can speak for myself, because I am so like that. I'm so used to giving, but not recognizing that it is a gift you give to others to receive from them.
Indeed.
A hard lesson I am still learning, that my receiving is actually a gift to others so that they can give.
Indeed it is. That's so beautiful.
Yeah. Well, I want to thank you so much, Dana. It's been so great to have you here. And it was so great to have Christine and Rachel join us in the show with their comments. And I just want to, and Erica, there we are. Yes, Erica, we don't realize how strong we are. Thanks, Erica, for that. Yes. And for all those who have silently been with us on the journey of this show, I want to thank all of you for being here today at the Edge of Fulfillment, today and every Friday at 10 a.m. Eastern Time. And our 5 secret or inspirational words today were heart, compassion, sacred, authentic, recovery. And so pop those in the chat or put them into an email with the subject line contest so I can easily pick it out. Send it to support@headheartsynergy.com so that we can enter you into the contest for that Amazon gift card. And I want to say thank you for being here. I am your host, Lorraine Lapointe of Head Heart Synergy, reminding you that at the edge of fulfillment, we always have a choice. You can stay on the edge and get what you've always got, or you can have that little bit of courage, that little bit of determination to move beyond the edge and get what you really want. And we'll see you next week.